Welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Ravi Korisetter, Senior Fellow, Dr. V.S. Wakankar, Archaeological Research Institute, Bhopal. In the subject of Indian culture and paper 2 on pre and protohistoric cultures of India, in this presentation, we will be focusing on dispersal of humans out of Africa and lay emphasis on various theories that have been proposed by different scholars on the patterns of migration that led to peopling of the entire planet during the last 2.5 million years or so. So we'll have to understand the concept behind the dispersal with respect to human expansion out of Africa. From their localized African origins, humans have come to live all over the world, and that can only have happened as a result of dispersals. This is the basic concept in archaeology that has helped us understand the antiquity of human remains across the old world, as well as the presence of more recent human ancestral remains in the regions outside the old world. The concept of old and new world are based on the nature of evidence pertaining to the presence of earlier settlements and later settlements. The earliest settlements are only known from Africa, Europe and Asia, whereas the continents of Australia and the Americas were recently colonized by expansion of Homo sapiens out of Africa during the last 200,000 years or so. So in the context of dispersals, there are several models that are available for understanding the distinctive phases of human expansion. We briefly touched upon 3 or 4 models that already have been proposed by paleoanthropologists and archaeologists in terms of out of Africa 1, out of Africa 2, out of Africa 3 and out of Africa 4. There is some inconsistency in the way in which these out of Africa 1, 2, 3 and 4 have been described in literature. We will not go into the intricacies of these models and also the theory behind the models that are current in literature. Out of Africa expansions are also governed by the nature of evidence and the antiquity of evidence from different areas of the world. Current overwhelming evidence is in favor of expansion of post-erectus emergence as opposed to earlier pre-Homo expansion based on lack of typical older one sites from outside of Africa. Reinvestigations at older sites and application of refined chronometric methods dating of lower Paleolithic and Homo fossils bearing localities outside of Africa in Europe, East and Southeast Asia have given rise to 2 conflicting schools of thought. 1, long chronology and 2, short chronology. The concept of short and long chronology has also been extended to the recent African origins of modern humans and the peopling of the globe by modern humans. Growing body of multidisciplinary data from both early Homo and anatomically modern human sites in Europe and Asia, Arabia and Indian subcontinent are now at the center of debate on hominin expansion. The long chronology and short chronology that is being debated in the context of both first expansion of Homo erectus out of Africa into Europe and India, and also in the context of expansion of anatomically modern humans out of Africa into Europe and the Indian subcontinent are based on multidisciplinary data that have been obtained by the archaeologists working at a number of sites in Europe and Asia. As a result of these investigations, few sites have older dates and very few sites have younger dates. There are proponents of expansion out of Africa based on older dates and they adhere to longer chronology. There are archaeologists who adhere to shorter chronology, base themselves on younger dates for the sites that have been reported from different parts of Europe and Asia. Dated evidence in favor of long chronology for both the major expansion events in human history are taken into account. In both the expansion events, the short chronology adherents consider the existence of older sites in the critical geographical area between the Caucasus and Mediterranean Levant as either intermittent occupations or as part of failed expansion events. Typotechnological variation in the lithic assemblages along the identified dispersal paths have been attributed to the founder effect. The eastern expansion of Homo sapiens is speculated to have taken place along the southern arc, which is popularly known as southern dispersal. Two distinct paths of dispersion suggested on archaeological and genetic evidence, one northern route and another coastal route. Either of these paths led modern humans to the northern shores of Australia and ocean crossing around Indonesia. This long and short, in the context of long and short chronologies, there is not serious debate with respect to the first major expansion out of Africa, because there are very few sites suggesting the expansion out of Africa during the pre-erectus stage. In the context of anatomically modern humans, it's not only the fossil evidence which has been reported to be older in some areas, particularly in the Levant, and younger in most other areas, have given rise to an argument that the early expansion of Homo sapiens out of Africa was a failed event. And that is why most people adhere to the younger chronology or shorter chronology in the context of expansion of Homo sapiens out of Africa. The critical geographical areas in the context of expansion of either anatomically ancients or anatomically moderns are those areas such as Caucasus and the Arabian Peninsula. Out of Africa 1, the long chronology of the Old World Lower Paleolithic settlements based on dates from sites like Damnisi in Georgia in Eastern Europe, Yuanmo dating back to 1.7 million years in China, and Sangiran in Indonesia dating back to 1.6 million years. Iberian sites also suggest the existence of early Homo erectus, early Paleolithic sites dating back to the Lower Pleistocene, with sites like Font Nove 3, Barranco Leon D, and Cima del Elefante in the time range of 1 to 0.9 million years ago. Dates are synchronous with the Jaramillo magnetic chron. It is generally believed that in Europe, vast majority of sites are in the time range of less than 1 million years ago. But there are some sites which are also older than 1 million years, which they like the Caucasian sites and Chinese sites and Indonesian sites. As a result of the presence of Homo erectus dating back to the Lower Pleistocene outside of Africa, there is a strong argument in favor of early expansion of Homo erectus or early expansion during the pre-erectus stage. Short chronology for European settlement is based on intermittent pre-Jaramillo settlements restricted to the Mediterranean area. Climatic and ecological barriers obstructed early entry of Homo into Europe and emphasize on the limitations of the ESR dating methods. So here the problems associated with dating as such, and also inferences based on paleo-environmental investigations have been taken into account to argue for a short chronology in Europe. Adherents of long chronology now depend more on multidisciplinary investigations that have been carried out at a number of lower Paleolithic sites which were already known, but re-investigations have been based on a multi-pronged approach, including a combination of radiometric, magnetostratigraphic, and biostratigraphic methods. And they provide a revised age estimates for the Iberian sites, including Cima del Elefante, Gran Dolina, and Vallaparadis between 1 to 0.9 million years ago. Gran Dolina is placed at 0.8 million years ago. Thus, they show a continuity from Jaramillo event. Recent dating efforts as well as multidisciplinary investigations at the Spanish and Georgian sites in Europe and geochronology of the lower Paleolithic sites in the Indian subcontinent, considerable swing in favor of long chronology both in India and Europe is gaining strength. As we have discussed in the previous presentation, the Indian subcontinent has now presented critically very early Pleistocene sites which are suggestive of the fact that human expansion out of Africa occurred as early as 2 million years ago. It's not only the Acheulean sites in southern India, there are some suspected hominin sites in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, which are dated to about 2 million years ago. Unfortunately, in the Indian subcontinent, most of the sites that have been dated to the lower Pleistocene have not yielded human remains. Out of Africa too generally refers to expansion of anatomically modern humans out of Africa. Anatomically modern humans are otherwise known as Homo sapiens, and emergence of Homo sapiens is also placed at 200,000 years ago in Africa. During the next 100,000 years, anatomically modern human settlements began to spread across different parts of Africa. However, there are some sites in Israel where the evidence for anatomically modern human settlements have been dated to 1,25,000 years ago. But further expansion of anatomically modern humans from the Levant into either Europe or into Asia has not been documented as yet. In this context, archaeologists argue for this particular evidence of presence of anatomically modern humans to a failed event. So, dispersal did not continue further. So, out of Africa model emphasizes on understanding the origins of anatomically modern humans, modern human behavior, development of distinctive stone tool technology, with focus on the rise of radial core and Levallois core technology, crescentic backed blade technology, and projectile composite tools to Africa. The oldest ones have been traced to Africa. Debate now rests on the inconsistency in the multidisciplinary data, such as mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome analysis of worldwide living populations and fossil hominins. B. Paleo-environmental, paleogeographical, and tectonic stability analysis of the regions occupied by the immigrant hominins, particularly along the suggested corridors of dispersal. And C. Absolute chronology of Middle and Late Pleistocene lithic industries outside of Africa. This out of Africa model excludes intermediate regions and the Far East continental areas from the ambit of dispersal and regional diversity of hominins. To date, the chronologically oldest fossils of Homo sapiens lay in Eastern Africa. Africa is also the region of greatest diversity in mitochondrial DNA among living populations, indicating that the hotspot of modern human evolution lies here. The out of Africa debate also focuses on the timing and nature of eastward expansion of modern humans out of Africa and lays emphasis on the geographical importance of the Indian subcontinent. In view of recent well-dated Middle and Upper Paleolithic sites reported from southern India, considers southern India as a halfway house between Africa in the west and Australia in the east. This model's chief concern is how fast the immigrant modern hominins dispersed along a coastal corridor, either episodically or as a single event. Both Arabian and Indian peninsulas have been considered gateways into Asia, especially in the southern dispersal model. One school advocates a single rapid dispersal event, the other school advocates multiple dispersal events. So, in the context of this dispersal out of Africa, the two distinctive geographical areas have now become a focus of attention of archaeologists, particularly the Indian subcontinent, which is considered at the crossroads of expansion out of Africa. Modern human expansion out of Africa began from Northeast Africa, and during the course of next 10,000 years or so, the modern human colonization of Australia occurred. The sites that have been known to represent modern human settlements in Australia now have been dated to around 60,000 years ago. In this particular context, the evidence from India and Arabia are very, very critical. Growing body of archaeological records from the Indian subcontinent and inland valleys of Arabia, Iran, and Afghanistan, the Middle and Upper Paleolithic periods impact on the timing of exit from Africa, necessitating emphasis on the Middle Paleolithic first model, and therefore the ongoing competition between Middle Paleolithic first and Upper Paleolithic first models is an ongoing debate. While some people argue that first human expansion out of Africa associated with Homo sapiens took place during the Middle Stone Age, whereas another school of thought suggests that this major expansion out of Africa coincides with the emergence of microlithic technology, and around 60,000 years this major expansion out of Africa occurred, leading to peopling of modern humans in Arabia and Indian subcontinent and further eastwards into Southeast Asia and Australia. Older dates for the microlithic settlements from central India is complementary to the microlithic first model and argue for a late entry of modern humans into India. Compromise in the route of dispersal out of Africa into South Asia and further east is also being suggested. Debate concerns with the attribution of capability as documented from the archaeological signatures to either Mode 3 Middle Paleolithic or Mode 4 Upper Paleolithic or Microlithic across the Old World coastline, especially the consistency, the suitability of the coastal regions and the consistency to exploit marine food resources employing composite tools. In recent years, the Green Sahara model has also come forward to explain the early expansion of Homo sapiens out of Africa, particularly during the Middle Stone Age. Earlier, these areas were the Sahara and Arabian desertic landscapes were considered as major barriers. And these three major biogeographical regions are now considered in the light of recent investigations, giving fresh evidence of Middle Stone Age as well as early Stone Age settlements in that particular region. On the basis of excellent late Quaternary paleoclimate records and newly discovered Paleolithic sequences dating from the Lower Paleolithic has identified the existence of ecological corridors across the Sahara and perennial Paleolithic habitats supported by green biomass, that is Green Sahara and Green Arabia models. Importance of Thar in the context of these two models in the Indian subcontinent is also gaining considerable attention. Alternate research suggests that southern dispersal route out of Africa during the later Pleistocene, coinciding with the microlithic invention that facilitated exploitation of coastal resources all along their path till the northern shores of Australia. The dating of microliths in central India, western India and southern India to 50,000 years ago is another clue for an argument that third major expansion of Homo sapiens out of Africa occurred coinciding with the early invention of microlithic technology in Africa around 60,000 years ago. Evidence from Indian subcontinent. In the context of expansion of anatomically modern humans out of Africa into the Indian subcontinent, it's not only the archaeological evidence and the lack of fossil evidence, ancient DNA studies as well as mitochondrial DNA studies on living populations are now adding greater strength to developing the model, either argue in favor of coastal dispersal routes or argue in favor of a northern dispersal route. Reliance on genetics and lithic assemblages from dated contexts have been used to address issues relating to modern human entry into India. Genetic evidence indicates modern humans likely left Africa around 64 to 100,000 years ago, but wide range of different dates for first human entry into India are proposed by different genetic analysis. In Sri Lanka, although there is no paucity of hominin remains, the lithic record and ancient DNA data is being generated from excavations at a number of well-known sites like Batadombalana, Belilena, Ketilgula, and so on and so forth. This research is likely to add more information on the existing body of literature relating to expansion of modern humans into Indian subcontinent and Sri Lanka. Interestingly, in Sri Lanka, so far there is no evidence of human expansion during out of Africa 1. Rock shelter excavations at Jwalapuram in Andhra Pradesh suggests the development of lithic technology from the middle to upper Paleolithic, and in central India, especially along the Narmada River, the sites like Mehetakeri have given sufficient evidence relating to entry of modern humans into India associated with the microlithic technology. South Asian colonization by modern humans began during the pre-Toba times and later expanded into a network of ecosystems across India and Sri Lanka. Clear indications of co-occurrence of microlithic assemblages older than 40,000 years ago in central India and middle Paleolithic assemblages dating back to pre-Toba times, that is about 80,000 years ago, are suggestive of two phases of expansion of modern humans into the Indian subcontinent. Supporting evidence from Arabia and Indian sites coincide with the oxygen isotope stages of 5 to 2. Scattered sites in India, Sri Lanka, such as Jwalapuram and Batadambalona, have early and secure dates older than 35,000 years for microliths of the Upper Paleolithic period, representing Mode 4 technology. Jabal Faya in Arabia and Jwalapuram in South India both have Middle Paleolithic Mode 3 assemblages, and they have been dated to oxygen isotope stage 5 and youngest Toba tuff, respectively, dating from 100 to 74,000 years ago. In this case, oxygen isotopic stages 5 and 3 interglacial climate conditions were congenial periods favorable for expansion of populations through desertic areas and at the time of high sea levels. The high sea levels indicate the probability that inland routes were more favorable than the coastal routes. The importance of the 80,000-year-old Middle Paleolithic site at Jwalapuram can be understood in the background of recent research that has been carried out in Arabia. Jabal Faya in particular has given evidence for expansion of modern humans out of Africa into the Indian subcontinent during the time period from about 125,000 years ago onwards. The Atarian and Nubian assemblages in North Africa and their occurrence in Arabia and beyond in the Indian subcontinent also indicates an early expansion of anatomically modern humans out of Africa through northern routes. Early presence of Atarian points in the Middle Paleolithic assemblages in India are of great relevance in tracing continental dispersal routes of early moderns into the Indian subcontinent. Different geographical areas, artifact variability has been noticed. This variation in lithic technology is explained as a product of influence of raw material showing patterning in space and time, and dispersed populations are adapted to changing environments. So timing of the arrival of anatomically modern humans into India is now based on the available geochronological dates. The southern dispersal hypothesis, the Middle Paleolithic first, the Upper Paleolithic first and microlithic model have a prominent place for the Indian subcontinent in the debate on the origins and the expansion of anatomically modern humans out of Africa. Those archaeologists who adhere to Middle Paleolithic first model suggest that the comparability of typotechnological comparability of assemblages of the Middle Stone Age and Middle Paleolithic in India and Africa. Those archaeologists who adhere to microlithic first model are very vehemently argue that until the invention of microlithic technology and adaptation to coastal environments, modern humans did not expand out of Africa. So in the context of this debate, evidence from India and Arabia are gaining more and more importance. Microlithic sites dating back to at least 45,000 years ago are known in the Indian subcontinent. Although mtDNA coalescence dates support a coastal route, it remains hypothetical in the absence of late Pleistocene hominin fossil record as well as hard archaeological evidence from the coastal regions of the Indian peninsula. In Indian Middle Paleolithic, with components of diminutive hand axes, heterogeneous core types, retest flake scrapers, and evolva and discoidal preparation suggests in situ evolution. On the other hand, small bifaces comparable to the Arabian Jabal Faya sea assemblages in the Indian assemblages from the Purana Gondwana inland basins are relevant to scrutinize the dispersal patterns, indicating the suitability of inland basins as well as the transcontinental routes. Anatomically, modern humans produced small bifaces is a significant point in the context of debate on the rise of Middle Paleolithic as an in situ development or replacement by anatomically modern humans. Regional variation in the Indian Middle Paleolithic indicates adaptive responses to the local habitat conditions. It also reflects gradual development of core technology from the late Acheulean and at the same time agree that AMH dispersal into South Asia took place using Middle Paleolithic technology and not with the Upper Paleolithic package. Dispersal routes out of Africa. On the basis of geographic, paleoclimatic, archaeological and genetic evidence, two major routes of dispersal have been identified. One, northern route via Egypt and Sinai. Another, southern route via Bab el-Mandeb into Arabia and further east. Facilitated the biogeographic environments between Africa and Eurasia with the ecological barriers of Sahara and Nile Valley. These models also considered the gateways that facilitated hominin movement out of Africa during favorable climatic regimes, especially during the interglacial phases. Two other potential routes, in addition to the northern route and the southern route. Through Central Sahara to North Africa, based on the fact that events during the interglacial periods gave rise to humid corridors across the Central Sahara during the time period from 130 to 117,000 years ago. Along the western coastal margin of the Red Sea lies in the proximity with Nile corridor, and this could have been a major movement in response to climate changes. Although there is no resolution with respect to which particular route was preferred by expanding Homo sapiens out of Africa during the time period from about 130,000 years to 60,000 years ago, it is possible to conclude that multiple sets of evidence for dispersal of human population have contributed to this conflict between coastal route and inland routes dispersal patterns with respect to movement of Homo sapiens out of Africa. Based on the nature and distribution of archaeological evidence in distinctive geographical environments, the first major dispersals in the old world occurred during the lower Pleistocene and in the early part of the late Pleistocene. Rapid colonization of new land masses by modern humans led to colonization of the New World around 10,000 years ago. In summary, we have discussed the nature of evidence relating to expansion of hominins out of Africa. Out of Africa, dispersal of modern humans or anatomically ancients are attributed to capability of human ancestors to venture into new areas equipped with new technologies and capability to adapt to new environments. The discussion also concerns with the favorable climatic conditions as well as environments across the dispersal routes, and the recent study of mitochondrial DNA of populations in different parts of the world have also added a new dimension to the study of expansion of hominins out of Africa and ultimate peopling of the planet. The archaeological evidence needs to be taken into account before dismissing either of these models from different parts of the old and new world. Thank you. For more details, please go through the e-text.